topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Success Secrets Exposed. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time or Wednesday mornings in Australia on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Every week, Sally leads intimate conversations with today's thought leaders, change makers, disruptors, and masters of their inner genius to bring you tips, strategies, and insightful perspectives on various topics shaping our lives and business growth, revealing the human element of success and challenge.
Good day, good morning, and welcome to you all to another episode of Success Secrets Exposed, where we do explore stories and legacies of incredible people. And today I'm thrilled to introduce not just one, but three extraordinary guests, both in their own right and collectively. First, we have Gary Lee Price, a world-renowned sculptor whose life mission is to lift the human spirit. His remarkable bronze statues are found all over the world, from Hong Kong Central Library to New Skin headquarters in Utah. Gary is also the visionary behind the monumental Statue of Responsibility, a 300-foot sculpture inspired by Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Joining Gary are Leesa Price, his supportive wife and collaborator, and Bridget Cook-Birch, the book whisperer, both of whom have been integral in bringing Gary's vision to life. But I'll let you explain a little bit more on that soon. Be prepared to be uplifted as we dived into an inspiring journey of creation, dedication, and the powerful legacy they are building together through art and responsibility. Please help me welcome to the show Gary, Leesa, and Bridget. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me again on our show. It's been a while since we've spoken, so I'd love to welcome you all and love to continue the story about the Statue of Responsibility. But can I ask you, please, to give us each a little bit of a backstory of how you've actually come together, and then we'll dive in.
Thank you, Sally. We're really excited to be here.
Thank you.
Yes, he always looks to me. So, I want to just say we feel really blessed that we know Bridget. So I believe that Bridget has been an angel, not just in our lives, in the lives of many, many people, but in particular in this project's journey. And she appeared on our life journey Bridget, has it been about 7-8 years ago?
About 7.
7 years ago, when Bridget and I met each other working on Bridget's foundation, Sheroes, that she started here in Utah to empower and uplift women. And it just appealed to me so much because that is my core passion. And so we became close friends. And then I found out about her book retreats. And she ended up inviting Gary and I to one of those. And Gary's book had been begun years ago with another co-author many years ago, and then put on the shelf for a period of years until that weekend, that magical weekend, when Bridget heard the story and said, I'm in. So you take it from there, Bridget. You know the rest.
Well, and Sally, what's so wonderful was to see these two together. There's an incredible chemistry and synergy, and they're incredibly contagious. So as
we like each other.
We like each other. It's pretty phenomenal. But it's also wonderful to see, how they support one another and in their passions and their dreams. And when I heard Gary's story, but also Leesa's integral story of when she heard about this monument, and it was something at a period of time that Gary kept on the down low, and Leesa said, this isn't just a monument, this is a movement.
Mm,
She became the wind beneath Gary's wings, and so integral in this process. And I already loved Leesa, but I fell in love with her and her support for him and this entire story. I'm like, this has to be told. It's such a compelling story. So.
yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with the magic and the chemistry and the captivation. That's been my experience of sharing brief time with both Gary and Leesa, and hearing about the story and how that all came about. So, can you flesh out that a little bit, Gary, as to this vision and how it was how it came about for you, and how all these dots have started to connect and the magic started to happen?
Absolutely. And I'm going to give you just a quick little preview of what we created. That is the inside scoop, the entire story of the Statue of Responsibility, including my visit to Vienna and meeting Mrs. Frankl in Austria. That was the adventure. That happened in 2004. Stephen Covey had come to me earlier and said, Gary, Dr. Frankl just passed away. He passed away in 97, and told me that Dr. Frankl had this vision, this idea, this incredible, I do call it a vision because it's to bookend the East Coast of the United States with the West Coast. Idea with bookending a Statue of Liberty with a Statue of Responsibility. I just fell in love with that concept, and I thought, a man of such vision to be able to do that. So Dr. Covey asked me to put a design to Viktor's idea. I did. We fly to Vienna. Mrs. Frankl gives her stamp of approval on it. She is the only one in the world that had that authority to do so, her husband passing away. And so the rest, as we say, is history, and it's been an incredible journey and a ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Bridget, I can see you smiling. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, we always say you have to get the book.
Yes, absolutely.
I will say, when Gary had this situation where he got to meet Dr. Frankl's wife, and she's also a doctor, another Dr. Frankl, and he says, stamp of approval, but there was such a beautiful ongoing story behind that Gary had no idea that when Viktor came out of, he was in more than 2, it's 3 or 4 concentration camps, and he was finally released. And as he was headed home and he's walking through an open air bazaar, he saw this bust of a suffering man, is what he called it. And it was a man just waist up, and he's naked, and he's holding his hands out in supplication as fires are consuming him. And it moved Viktor, and he put it on layaway until he could afford it. And he had a little special shelf that Gary would tell you all about in his study. And so when Ellie saw this monument that Gary had created of one hand reaching down to lift another, and she said, "You have answered my husband's question," because he would always say, "Who will be the one reaching down?" And so Gary had no idea this backstory, this impetus that Dr. Frankl had for so long. And here's this visualization that Gary had come up with because of his own story, and because of wanting to show the struggle, but also the salvation of one human lifting another, and how he drew that together, and it culminated in this magical moment in Dr. Frankl's study. And it's just one of my favorite, one tiny part of my favorite story in the whole book. There's just so many, but that one to me is incredibly magical, and it just shows the synchronicities.
Yes,
Like,
right.
There's so many of those in life, and here you expose all these success secrets. And I think one of these gets to be that, number one, none of us are in accident. But number two, if we care to take a look at all these incredible synchronicities and the threads of our story and where we determine our own destiny, also the choices that we make, we're watched over, we're brought together at certain times. And it all has to do with our choices and the energy that we put out. But wow, when we answer the call, that's when extraordinary things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful, Bridget. Well said. I'm going to give you a real quick sneak preview of, if you can see that.
Yeah,
Lisa,
can
you hold
it's
that up
easier
just
for
right?
me, probably.
And then scoot it the other way.
Yeah, beautiful.
You got to scoot it. Oh, there you go.
There we go. It's hard to see behind the book. There we go.
Now you can see that suffering man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the clincher there. And of course, Viktor always asking, where's the hand reaching down? I bring a sculpture that depicts a hand reaching down and a hand reaching up. That was Mrs. Frankl's verification that somehow through the ethers, and so beautifully, as you said, Bridget, about energy, that we were able to coincide and create something that answered that question. And to me, it was a very simple deduction that, well, how do you depict responsibility?
Yeah.
And to me, everything boils down to relationships and our interconnection with each other. And when you do that, that is, you can't mistake what that means. And being a figurative sculptor for, well, it's been 45 years now, but back then it was, I don't know, maybe 30 years. I wanted to depict something that really people could relate to and instantly know, okay, that depicts our connection and our responsibility to each other.
Yeah. And you've had a lot of your sculptures and a lot of the work that you've done have had the emphasis around the hands, and this bringing together, this collective lifting up and helping hand scenario is obviously birthed this vision, or I'm not sure which comes first, but it's been that manifestation of the collective to bring this to life. What's your hope and your legacy from this as it relates to the world? Let's go big or go home. What's the legacy that you're hoping to leave for the world with this?
As a sculptor, and I have to preclude this by saying that I've never really thought about legacy. I mean, it's a beautiful word and it's something that happens, but my focus has been to just create. I'm a worker. I'm in the trenches. I just love doing physical things, and that's one reason why sculpture resonates so well with me. That being tactile and moving this clay and creating some three-dimensional form that people can relate to, and so it's never been about legacy. That's a what would you call it? A byproduct, perhaps, of what we're doing. But I would hope that, and as you mentioned, Sally, I've done a lot of sculptures that depict hands, and the main one was called The Ascent. They rise highest who lift as they go. It's two Native Americans climbing up a precipice, and they're helping each other out, right? They have that hand clasp. It's a very vertical piece, as is the Statue of Responsibility. So my prayer is that this life given to me on this beautiful planet has a meaning of connecting people and giving them something that is visual, that helps them realize what I believe our mission should be. And that is that we are connected, we're responsible for each other, and we get to do something about that. It's not just an ethereal thought. It's real. What would you say, sweetie?
I love the phrase inspire, not require. I feel like the Statue of Responsibility has an opportunity to inspire for generations to come. And that would be, if you want to say legacy, for us, like Gary said, it's, that's a word that isn't kind of something we aspire to, but I will say it is very significant in the fact that we have 9 children between us and 20 grandchildren at this moment. And so, yeah, if there's an attachment to legacy for us, that's it. Yeah. It's that we feel a heavy responsibility and also a hopeful responsibility to leave the world a better place for our children and grandchildren and their children and grandchildren for generations to come. And I think right now in the history of our planet, not just our country, but our planet, it is so important that we find hope and that we can somehow educate and inspire the next generations. Otherwise, we're kind of spiraling the wrong direction and it's not going in a good place.
I love that you've expressed it that way, because when I think of think of you guys, and if I think of the word inspiration, I think of inspired action, which ties in beautifully to it being a movement. And it is a movement of people that are inspired by some form of action, their own version of what their actions are to help bring this forward. So thank you for that. Bridget, would you like to add to that?
I'd love to. I think we have this incredible executive committee, just full of volunteers, and they're professionals that have been involved in all different backgrounds, walks of life, but all significantly entrenched in service, all significantly entrenched in legacy. And they might not call it legacy like Gary, but it's like, how can I bring to the table everything that I've done up until this moment to make sure that this is something that happens, that, as Leesa said, inspires generations. And I think one of the things that is so important about this movement is that it's not just about today. We see in leadership today that there's so much reaction and there's so much given for, what's gonna be the economic purpose, what's gonna be the social purpose, how can I spin this, how can I do this thing that's gonna get some short-term gains. What I love about this movement is it is about taking action now, and as Leesa said, for generation upon generation upon generation, because we are exceptional creatures, and we have the opportunity to do something so exquisite in our day, and to build upon the shoulders of giants that have come before us. And so we can choose something small, and that's okay when it is revolving around love. But there are very few people who have enough courage, like Gary and Leesa, to create something absolutely monumental. It means coming up against criticism. It means getting out there in such a big way that everything is vulnerable and exposed. And it is also incredibly powerful. And so I see this like movement forming behind these two, because there are other people on the planet who are saying, I'm really tired of this tearing down. I feel like we have so much more to offer each other. I want something better for that child and that child's child as well. And so, you can tell we're all very passionate about this, because it's time. We've had a period of breaking each other down, but it is time to build each other up and to lift.
That is, Bridget, that is a perfect segue. You're speaking of power and time. Another Victor Hugo, author of Les Miserables and Hunchback of Notre Dame, and that he said, oh my gosh, this quote is so good. Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. I mean, you talk about everything lining up, the stars lining up, the energy lining up. It's time for this.
It is.
Yeah, beautiful. Can you elaborate on that? Because I think that too is part of the inspiration, is how all of those things have come about and have lined up, and how that momentum's building. Can you share some of that stuff with us?
I will share this point, and then it's called The Perfect Storm. So I'm an impatient person. I want things to happen quickly. And when I have an idea or a vision, I can control what's going on. I grab my clay and man, I can look at reference material. I can have a great model. I can just go for it, and I can create it quite quickly. Being an impatient person, I wanted this to already be done, long time ago.
Kindred spirits on that one.
But it's been this roller coaster on some levels. And I'm looking at our planet right now and where we're at right now. My goodness, you talk about the perfect storm and what is needed.
Yeah.
And, you look at the Statue of Liberty, you look at Bartholdi's statue, and man, talk about the perfect timing for that. Here, all these immigrants are coming into our country and they're seeing this beautiful lady there holding this torch of freedom. I mean, talk about how inspirational that was for them. And look at the inspiration that it's brought since 1886 when it was developed. And so, that's my input on that part.
Yeah. And, I would say, as for what's happening and some of the inside scoop, I'm going to tie two things together. Number one, I want to come back to this incredible book and Bridget's ability to bring this story to life, and the tie-in that Viktor Frankl had his own Holocaust prison camp, if you will. And for the listeners that don't know Gary's life story, here's a teaser. As a 6-year-old, innocent little 6-year-old, Gary witnessed the murder-suicide of his mom and stepfather on a military base in Germany. And after that was shipped to the States, and within about a week found himself in Montpelier, Idaho in first grade with these visions of this horrific experience that, two things there I want to add. One, another big thank you to Bridget for so gracefully and beautifully helping us navigate that. And we did that. We birthed this book during COVID. One day we said, hey, we're bored out of our tree. Let's pull that book out and get it done. And it was a journey. But I bring that up because after Gary's shipped to Montpelier, he then is put into a home where he's abused in every way imaginable for the next 7 years. And so for this man to turn into someone whose mantra is lifting the human spirit, his was literally all but decimated and just destroyed by the abuse, which Bridget so tastefully, but also painfully describes in the book, for Gary to have his prison camp, if you will. So I don't think it's an accident that it went from Viktor Frankl to Gary Price and now the world. And then to that, I want to add the timing piece and draw that together, that, we've, as Gary mentioned, had this roller coaster, but hindsight is always 2020. And we look back at all those dots that we've been, creating all along. And right now, in the last, I would say even in the last 3 months, we have had more progress and traction than we have in all of these years together. And there are some things we're not at liberty to talk about, but we have had, really significant, very well recognized names that if I were to mention, everyone would know, reach out to us. And say, hey, it's time and we need to make this happen. And what can we do to help? As well as locations. So I'm sure some don't know, but we've spent many, many years trying to put this in San Diego, where Ellie Frankl told Gary that day in Vienna that Viktor would have wanted that. So that would be our dream, to have it in San Diego. But California is a challenging situation these days. So that's an understatement. So we're not sure if that's where it's going to be. In the meantime, Utah's governor has reached out to us and said, hey, we want to bring it back to Utah, which actually, as recognized by the Utah legislature, Utah is officially the birthplace of the statue. So it's appropriate. And Utah, no accident, happens to be a very responsible state. It's the only state in our entire nation that has a balanced budget, believe it or not, and several other reasons why it makes sense if it does end up here in Utah that it would have a good home here. So we're making great efforts and traction and leaps towards what this will be. The one thing we all know is that it will be where it's supposed to be. We've seen too much of what you said, synchronicity, serendipity, God's hand, higher power hand, whatever that is for anyone, we can't deny that. And we know that we're just stewards over it. And we'd love to say anybody who reads the book or hears the story, you feel it, you know that this is a spiritual project, not a religious project, spiritual, very significant project for humanity. And sure, there will be pushback. Anything that's good is going to have pushback. And we just march forward, Sally. And we're going to.
That's the journey. That is the journey, isn't it? Is that marching forward and bringing things to life. Bridget, please, over to you to add on to that, because I know how much heart, soul, comfort, care you would have brought to Gary as part of that book process. Having read the book, Divine Turbulence, and gone through the journey in the book and had a number of conversations, it would have been I'm going to call it a tough gig, because it would have been so raw and personal and all those sorts of things. And in your nurturing hands, Bridget, that, I can only imagine the incredible journey. So please share your insights on, the book process and the life that the book that is continuing on with the sculpture.
Well, Sally, you helped us launch it. So we want to say thank you for that, because you were integrally involved, as we were first getting this out. But to backtrack a little bit, Gary being an artist, he's very tuned in to heart and to intuition and inspiration. And, it's interesting because a lot of books around leaders, they may go a little bit into certain dark nights or dark evenings, but sometimes they want their books to be all rainbows and fairy tales and unicorns. And there was a decision to be made, and Gary and Leesa and I, sat down and talked about it. And, as Leesa mentioned, this really was like the heart of it was birthed during COVID. And there were so many people facing complex trauma. And the hard thing was for us to watch how many people were staying there.
Yes.
And what is significantly wonderful about Gary's story was he found faith and he found art. And it was enough to lift him so that he could turn his life around and really be an inspiration to others, because so many things were done to him. And what he did was make that be done through him and for him, so that he could create something this magnificent. And you see his artwork all around the world. He doesn't hold back. He takes all of his experiences, even, he has a lot of beautiful pieces of the innocence of children and the vision of flight and play and heart. And you see that. And he allowed that innocence to come out in the book. And then he also allowed us to see what it was like to be worked on. And then also for him to have his own liberation day, and for him to come to grips with different decisions along the way. And I will tell you, just like your great country is founded on redemption. And this is half of this legacy of this statue, of this movement, is that we are so fallible, we are human, and we are messy, and we make mistakes, but it can have such incredible meaning. And so in the writing of this, there are these beautiful threads of what does it take to be responsible? What does it mean to be a responsible father? Because Gary had some interesting situations that happened between his birth mother and his father. And there's all of this genetics, But then there's what does it mean to show up in someone's life in a really responsible manner? And that's just like one piece of this. But I feel like what Gary's vulnerability has allowed is this great sense of purpose that no matter what has been done to you, and even mistakes that you may have made along the way, that all of those are overcomable when you turn your heart and your eyes to service and to creation. And that's what he does every day. As he says, he's impatient, but he creates all day long. And that creation, that is what's possible for any of us who have been through some hell and high water, but we can come out on the other side. That's where we can be victorious. And I really feel that this story, you know, we didn't know when we went to publish this book, we didn't know about this huge momentum taking place with the statue that's happening today.
Yeah.
But I told Gary, I said, you cannot wait. The story itself stands on its own. And the statue and the monument will be gravy on top of this, because this book has its time and so does the statue. And we're seeing both of those coming together. And it's crazy too, the power of story, Sally, because, you know, we have seen people not understanding the symbolism behind the statue. And then when someone cares enough to school them on, well, do you know the story behind it? Do you know what this is all about? Do you know about Gary? Do you know about Viktor Frankl? Do you know how he came up with this idea?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they go from like being naysayers to saying, I want to see this. I want to see this happen. I want to be a part of this. So we are able to invite everyone. Please read or listen to the story. The Audible is fantastic. Find out what's behind this, and then come and join us, because as we're talking to you in Australia, this is not just a US endeavor. Right. It is worldwide in its ramifications for all of humanity at a time that we really need it most.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's the element for me was, yes, the story, but when I talk to people in the simplistic version of the story and the purpose around the statue and the hands coming together, I can see their faces light up, and it just lands because they get it, and they have their oh my gosh moment. So there is that, I'm going to call it the human calling, when they just understand the tip of the iceberg. But of course, there's all of that other gold underneath that sits underneath that you're aware of, and that certainly is happening. So let's talk about being an impatient person too. Now, what can be done in all of those different levels and areas as it relates to inspiring the movement further and getting more people buying in? How can we help mitigate the impatience? How can we speed things up for you, Gary?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm going to pass that on, Leesa.
Well, spread the word. That would be it. Yeah. Spread the word. You know, we love being on podcasts, and Gary's already been on one this morning. We do one about once a week. We've got another big one this week, and we love sharing the message and sharing the story. So we love getting the message out. That's one way. And then go do it yourself. Go talk about it, because once you hear the story, it's your story. It's your story now, Sally. That's why you reached out again and said, hey, and we want that to be that way. We encourage people to own it themselves and go make a difference. So right now, our team, we do have a wonderful team. Bridget referred to that earlier, but they are just finalizing some of the steps as we move into the fundraising part of building the statue. So we're in the final steps of identifying exactly where the 305 foot will be. And simultaneously, I'm going to just add a little footnote here. We are dedicating a 15-foot replica of the exact one Gary gifted to Ellie Frankl that day in Vienna many years ago. 15-foot version will be dedicated at Alliant University, where Viktor had a post back in the day. Very likely the very university, very first place he ever talked and spoke about a potential statue of responsibility. So that will be happening in the next few months. And that will be a really key piece of this entire puzzle.
Absolutely.
Allow people to have their name on that particular piece as donors. So as people reach out to us and say, hey, I want my name on that, our team is right now setting up that information. So they can reach out to us at statueofresponsibility.org or weown.com as well. But we are a 501c3, fully approved. And we do have a way to have people make donations now. And I really think that's the next thing that's coming, is just the fundraising, where that 305 is going to be. And then also know that there will be other opportunities right here in Utah. We plan on using the Statue of Responsibility, the state of Utah's 250 committee, which is for America's 250 celebration. It will be our country's 250th birthday on July 4th, 2026. So we're putting a 20-foot replica at the Salt Lake International Airport. And that's going to be a calling card from 2026. And then, of course, the Olympics are coming to Utah. So if we end up here, we've got a great, wonderful place for it. We're also working on putting one at LAX for the 2028 Olympics, and several other airports across the nation, and then satellite statues around the world. Before COVID, we had 7 countries that had reached out to us, actually, asking to have one. And of course, our answer is yes, but we want to get one started here in America, the 305 first, which could happen very, very quickly now. So donate, be a part of it, get your name on it, and then go share it. Share it with people.
And what's wonderful is that there's a potential for people to be legacy donors, to be part of something. Like, imagine if you could have been part of the Statue of Liberty and been one of those founding members that made history for all these many years. And that's what's available now. But what I think is beautiful too is Lady Liberty was also funded by the people, street sweepers and school children and others. So little bits make a huge difference, and large bits, thank you very much, that will also help too. So no one gets left out. Anyone that wants to be a part of this could be a part of this. And the spreading of the message is really paramount. So we love anyone to share this story. And Sally, you've just been phenomenal. Thank you for having us.
Yes.
My pleasure, Gary. Over to you.
I have to throw one thing in too. The original name for the Statue of Liberty is Liberty Enlightening the World.
Oh, wow.
Bartholdi, right at the beginning, realized what an impact and how influential this thing could be. And so that's why we say it's not just a monument, it's a movement. You know, we will have one in Australia. We'll have one in Israel. We'll have one everywhere, so that because people are visual.
Yes.
And what they see visually affects them. Our environment, the trees we plant, the flowers, the shrubs, how we decorate our home, that all has an influence on our beautiful little brains.
Yes.
So we want these everywhere, and that will happen.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I think for me, that is, it's the sharing of that story. As you said, I've got a great story to share when I talk about it. And I have the opportunity to own that and share that message in my version of that. And it's all those little stories, that story behind the story that's shared with somebody else and somebody else told it, is where the magic happens, because that's where the collective comes from. That's where all of the energy comes from, and that's where all of the opportunities come from. So I certainly encourage everybody to share and spread the message as much as possible. Obviously, you can jump on the book, the Divine Turbulence, read that, listen to that, get the real story behind the story, and then continue on with the story of where this journey is now leading and the progression that's occurring as well. I had a really good question and I've just got too excited and I've just lost it.
Well, and I will say all the proceeds of the book go to the Statue of Responsibility.
Mm.
So
Thank you for mentioning that. So looking back now, it's going to be a bit of a deep one. This is something a bit perky. Looking back now from when you started writing the book, which in itself was a journey of self-discovery and healing and all those other great things, to where you are now, in a couple of words, Gary, how would you describe that, that journey? Because I know it's been a longer one, but there's been so much happening. What does that journey mean to you in a few words?
It means to me the persistence. I have to sum it up in the word persistence, in that whenever we're on an incredible journey, something that is going to be epic and really have a huge influence, that's what it takes. We just have to stick with it. I believe it was Wolfgang Goethe who said, "Dream no small dreams, for small dreams have no power or influence on humanity." And so when we have something like that, we just keep going, and we don't give up. We conquer the foes. We stay with it. We stick with it.
Mm. And Leesa, for you, with you driving more, I'm going to say the movement side of it, so the energy side of it, and bringing it all together. What would those words be for you?
I love his persistence comment, because that's part of it. But I'm going to add this thought. I love the idea that if you can accomplish your dream in your lifetime, it's not big enough. So dream big. Dream big, and dream bigger than you've ever even imagined, because I believe most of us have no idea what we're really capable of. I would never have dreamed this little girl from Benjamin, Utah would be doing what I'm doing and talking to the people I talk to every day, and just the journey that we're on. And we're just ordinary people. We're Gary and Leesa, Idaho and Benjamin. That's what we nickname each other. We're just really ordinary people who have honestly had some extraordinary crossroads where we said, that would be easier, but let's go that way. And it's been bold, but live bold, live big, and go for it. That would be mine.
Beautiful.
Yeah, well said. And Bridget, for you?
I think I would have to say, there is so much power in stories and words, and the story you tell yourself is the most important story. And there was a story that Gary told himself for a time, and there was a story that Leesa told herself for a time, and there's a story that I told myself for a time. And it's so fascinating that we get to be playing together in this, and I just adore these two, and I look up to them so much. And so I love the persistence and the boldness. And I would also say that there is a particular magic when you believe in the power of your story to change the world. That's my business tagline. And I wrote that before I wrote Gary's story. And it's so fascinating to me, because the things we write and the things we choose to believe about ourselves and for others, like Gary dreams big, Leesa dreams big, and it doesn't just encompass them, it's for so many other people. And so when you dream and dream big, include other people in that, and believe that your stories can change the world, because they can, and they do.
Yeah, well summed up. We're getting close to the end, so I'm going to ask you each this question: what haven't I asked, or what do you still feel the audience needs to know?
I'm going to throw this in real quick. For me, the breakthrough was the title, Divine Turbulence. If I could put a message out of what this is about, it is about that we all have turbulence in our lives. We have a son that's a pilot. We know a lot of pilots, and when you're flying, it can get a little shaky sometimes. We all have that. We all experience that. I also believe one of my core foundation beliefs is that there is a higher hand. There is a divine orchestration to every one of our lives. And the more we recognize that and realize that, the more we can be on path and the more we can do great things. Realizing that my mother, who was taken from me at age 6, she's one of my guardian angels. Leesa's mother, Clara Lee, who's, wherever, and so many people, Viktor Frankl, Dr. Covey, so many. My gosh, we have so many forces behind us that there is literally nothing we can't do. Focused and acknowledge those higher powers.
Yes.
Yeah, well said. And Leesa, something to finish off with you that you'd like to add?
Yes, I will add that a lot of people are embarrassed by their story, or they feel less than because of their stories. And I know Bridget alluded to that. I was widowed when I was 26 years old through suicide with 4 babies under 6. And as a result of that, in my community here in Utah, it was really hard. So my message is, we get to not let our story define us. In fact, I love the thought that our stories refine us. They cause us to really, when we embrace our story at least, and when we say, everything is with a divine purpose in my belief. And when we can look back at whatever that hardship or whatever that embarrassing thing or that, whatever it is happened to us, and know that there's a thank you. I love, my son taught me the ouch, thank you. Jedediah said, a lot of things in our lives are ouch and they hurt. But he said, Mom, there's always a thank you. It may not be today, and it might be down the road a ways, but if we always know that there's a thank you, and that's been my experience, that's my truth. So ouch, thank you, and don't let your story define you, let it refine you, make you shiny, and let you be an example to reach back and be that. I was that hand needing help when I had 4 little babies. Now, thank heavens, we're in a position to say, how can we help you?
Yeah, beautiful.
There you go. That's mine.
Beautiful.
And Bridget, in the last few minutes or so, your thoughts too, please.
Well, Leesa just said everything that pretty much that I would say, but I will just share. Humans are messy. We're just messy. And we do have an ability to shine, as Leesa said. And I find that often our mess becomes our message. And so I would just, for the listener and the watcher of this, to think about what messy things have you been through that, as Leesa says, you can now thank for, but now what also can you do to bring it forward? Like that, let it be this massive, beautiful contribution to the world. And a lot of times it's like Mother Teresa said, I may not do great things, but I can do all things with great love. And, what is that for you? So that would be my lasting thought.
Thank you very much to all of you for sharing so much with us today. I love that we finished on that contribution, because I think that's the best way to be able to serve and make an impact and a dent in the universe and change lives. Thank you for sharing all of your backstories about the Statue of Responsibility and all of the messiness that's become the greatness. I wish you every success, and I look forward to being able to share this continued journey with you all. Thank you very, very much. That's us for the Success Secrets Exposed. We'll see you next week on another episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally.
Remember, if you want to be sought after and sold out, as well as being known as the obvious expert in your industry, you need to speak with Sally, our host of Success Secrets Exposed. Sally is the founder of Monetize Your Content, a done-for-you content marketing agency that helps you be easy to buy. See you next week on another episode of Success Secrets Exposed. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time or Wednesday mornings in Australia on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV.